Hi there, Paul. I am Sakai and I am a singer. I did not grow up in abject poverty, you see, but my mother and I were the lowliest in our father's homestead. Amai had been the first wife, but she had not borne Baba a child, not even a girl, in the first 10 years of their marriage. So Baba had remarried and remarried and remarried. And all the newer wives came and had sons before Amai had me. By the time I came, Amayu was already the laughing stock of the compound, and I soon joined her. Even though Amai and I worked like anyone else in the homestead, we were the last to be given anything. The last to get pieces of meat from the chunks that came our way, the last to get the grain stored in the communal shed, the last to be seen, the last to be heard. When Baba died, I heard Amai breathe a sigh of relief. The news had come while we were in the fields. All 6 of Baba's wives and all 25 of us, his children, were weeding the millet, rapoko, groundnuts, and roundnuts we had sold. Baba was nowhere to be found. In all my 12 years of life, I had never seen Baba come to the fields. He had always said, I paid raw order for all these women and enriched their parents' crows. So now it is time for them to pay back into the crow that made them dignified. So while we were in the fields, he would be at the ndari, drinking with the other men. He was poisoned, the bearer of bad news said, shifting from one foot to the next and addressing the crowd of women and children before him. He drank beer from a gulp, and the next minute he was frothing on the mouth and falling to the ground. Amai sighed in relief, and I looked up at her. But the youngest wife suddenly let out a scream and fell into the fresh green saplings of millet. The other wives followed suit, rolling onto the plants that we had painstakingly separated from the weeds, as if that would bring him back. Amai was the last to fall, imitating the cries from the other women, but unlike them, there were no tears on her cheeks, and her wide open mouth could easily have been a grin rather than a wail. If Amai had thought Baba's death would bring her peace and stability, she was mistaken. Baba's eldest son, Chawona, became the head of the homestead, and true to his name, we saw. We saw the levels of strife worsen in the homestead, and Chawona would only release the oxen for his mother and his mother's favorite sister wife. While they used the plow to till the land, we used our hoes and bare hands until blisters formed and ruptured. Even worse, instead of filling the silos with the grain harvested by the entire homestead, he instructed all the women to build their own sheds and store their harvests there. You shall have to reap and eat what you sowed, he told us. And of course, Amai and I were the most disadvantaged. By the end of the first year after Baba's death, the younger wife had left. My father's homestead did better treatment than this, she said as she bade us farewell. Then the 4th wife left, and the 5th wife left, and it was just Amai and I and the 2 favored wives in the homestead. Why can't we leave too? I asked Amai. She sighed in resignation. Then where would we go? She said. My father's homestead is now run down. Everyone left for their husbands, and my parents are both gone. Where will we go, Amai? Manango. So we stayed. We kept as far from the laughing glances and mocking voices as we could. We toiled in our tiny field and made barely enough to see us from one harvest to the next. 2 years after Baba died, Amai then started to disappear on me. 1 minute we would be in the hut or in the field together laughing. The next, she would be preening herself, asking if there was dust on her face, running fingers into her kinky hair and wiping the dust on her feet. Then she would be gone. She would return sometimes with a sirloin of deer or the leg of an antelope. I never asked where she got this, but would gulp them down greedily. Then one day she told me the truth. She had met a man who was wealthy and who wanted to marry her. Imagine, Manangu, she said, we will leave the squalor and start all over again. I was excited. We were no longer going to be the laughingstock of the homestead. We would be living. Amai even promised me, you will get new clothes and you shall eat the best of the best foods and meats. You shall never have to work as you do in the fields now. You will be a rich man's daughter. So we prepared for our departure. The 2 wives looked at us in fascination as if to say, where will you 2 go? It's not as if you have a kumusha. But we continued packing, and Amai's only explanation was a gleeful smile on her lips. We left the day before Yerora and arrived at a paternal uncle's home where the Rora would take place. I was not privy to the negotiations. All I had in the afternoon after the Rora had been paid were ululations and whistles and a song, Tauya naye ni magumbezi. We stayed in the uncle's home until the full moon, and on the morning of the full moon, we set out. I had scrubbed my face until it shone, and had scraped my cracked heels on a rough stone until they were white. My excitement was palpable. All I could think of were the feasts that we would eat in our new home. But Amai had left out one crucial aspect, that I would have a sister in my new home. I remember Amai pointing out the beautiful home that would be our new home from afar, and I remember my heart beating in excitement. What I had not bargained for was the girl who emerged from the gate and walked towards our scotch cut. I remember how that first look brought a pang to my heart. I knew this girl. Well, not her personally, but from my father's homestead. She was the daughter of the remaining wives, well fed, well bathed, and well cared for. She lacked nothing. I looked at her and saw the shiny furry skins that she wore. I saw the healthy crown on her head and her shins which shone as though they had been dipped in the best oils and honey. I hated her instantly. I resented her before she could come closer and greet me. I knew then that we would never be friends. As the girls carried about, taking bags to hearts, Amai whispered to me, "Look at her running around as if she is the woman of the homestead. This is my home. I will soon show her her place." Amai must have seen the jealousy in my face as I stared at her clean soles as she walked ahead of us. "And you? Put your chin up. This is your home and your new home too. Don't ever make this girl think that she's better than you because she's not. Very soon, all she has will be yours. I will make sure of it, okay?" I had nodded. True to Amai's word, by the end of the first night in the new magnificent courtyard, I had new skins. I allowed a little belch out of my throat as I admired the fit of the skins and the big heart that I would share with the new girl, and I smiled. This was life. This was what life was meant to be, a full stomach full of delicious foods and meats that you didn't slave over on an open fire for, nice skins that accentuated your figure, and a heart you didn't have to share with many sisters who didn't like you. I was home. In the new home, Amai forbade me from working. "My daughter," she told me, "I want to secure a good match for you, unlike the marriage that I had with your father. Where you will marry, you will have servants to tend to your needs. So you won't have to worry about mundane things like cooking. Just take care of yourself. Eat the good food so that your body and skin glows, and don't worry about anything." True to her word, Amai stopped waking me up early in the morning to do chores. By the time I awoke, I would find Chiedza having warmed my bath for me, and I would eat the porridge she prepared. In time, I started to see her for who she was, just another girl who had hid under beautiful and fluffy skins. Without the fluffy skins, she looked like I had done back in my father's home, haggard and poor. Amai was also serious about setting me up with a good match. At supper, she would ask my new Baba about any orders he had and if they were for rich people. Whenever Baba said a wealthy customer was coming to collect a carving or a piece of furniture from the shed he worked from, Amai would tell me to take care while bathing and wear my most beautiful skins. Once the visitor arrives, she would say, "Go and wander around the shed and sing in your most beautiful voice." I would do just that, discreetly clearing my throat and starting to sing like it was the last thing I was supposed to do. And always the visitor would stop mesmerized and tell me what a beautiful voice I had. Before long, I was being invited to the best parties and events in the village, and at every event, I would become the main topic. I was becoming more and more famous. Amai and I were beginning to consort with influential and powerful people in the village. I was beginning to make friends, and whenever I was in the village, hashes of adoration would follow in my wake. One day, we had a caller at the homestead. It was one of the king's aides, and my new Baba called us to the shed where he spent his days in to see the visitor. After greeting us, the aide turned to me and said, with a smile, "Sakai, your gift has preceded you. The king has heard of your beautiful voice, and he and his wives are excited to hear it. There is to be a celebration for his son after he comes back from initiation in the mountains in the next moon, and the king wants to see if you can sing for the prince. Before everything even registered, I was nodding my head. Very well then, the aide said. We shall go to the king's court now, where you will sing. If the king is satisfied, then you might be the main entertainment for end of initiation night. At the king's court, I forgot everything and held my heart in my hands before belting it out. I could see their smiles as I sang, and when I was done, I was given a standing ovation. Well done, the king said, shaking my hand as I curtsied before him. You are going to be the main event at end of initiation. It is an exclusive event, but all your family is invited. I want you to come and sing for my son. See you on that day. Amai and Baba got me the best skins, and in the days towards the event, I scrubbed my face with lemon and grain to clear away my acne spots. I had heard of the prince, and I could not wait to meet him. He is so handsome, my friends had told me, and he is to be the next king. Whoever he marries first is going to be one lucky woman. I knew then I would have to look my best. In the afternoons, I practiced and drank warm water for my throat. And whenever I met Chiedza as I did my practices, and as she worked around the courtyard, I would laugh. Oh, poor girl, I would say to her. I wish I could carry you in my rucksack with me just so you can be part of this exclusive event. But someone has to remain home and cook. Sorry, not sorry. On the morning of the celebration, Amai had to do my hair and fluff out my skin. I so wish I could go too, she muttered underneath her breath, and I laughed. What would you even wear, Chiedza, except your eggs? Relax. Stay here, stay at home, stay where you should be. You were not invited anyway. Once we got there, we found the richest and the most famous people in the village there. We sat amongst the crowds, but the king's aides came and took us to be part of the main event. I remember the moment I saw him. We had arrived and had been seated in the area reserved for guests. Then, once everyone had settled, a robed and blindfolded man was brought to the center of the courtyard amongst ululations and whistles. A drummer started a beat slowly, and a harp joined in. I stood up and took center stage close to the prince, and I opened my mouth to sing. Not even the wind moved, and all that could be heard was the clear ring of my voice. As I crescendoed, an aide slowly removed the blindfold, and the most handsome young man emerged, blinking into the bright light, shaking his head for composure, searching for something with his eyes until they fell on me, and a dazzling smile broke through his face. I almost missed a beat. The end. Thank you once again for coming to my channel. Thank you again for listening to my stories. Thank you for listening to my previous African Cinderella story. Thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for everything. I wrote the story just because I wanted to reimagine Cinderella from an African girl's perspective, and I am doing it in 5 parts. So this is the second part after the Chiedza story, which is the Cinderella story in essence. And here we talk about the evil stepsister. So I want you to tune in so that you see the remaining stories, and I hope you will like each and every one of them. Please don't forget to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe, even to just view. I appreciate you and I love you long time. Bye.